Did you go on the march yourself?
I was there in spirit, but not in person.
What were you doing instead? Having a lie-in?
I was having a lie and feeling a bit crook, actually.
Oh, okay. I hope you don't have COVID, because that's going...
A bit of that flu-y stuff going around.
Yeah, there is actually. I know. Well, gosh, look at all the secondary schools in New Zealand are down at the moment. Hey, two things, obviously. The fast-track legislation that's still going through the House, and obviously also the announcement by the Minister of Resources yesterday, Shane Jones, on oil and gas exploration. I've had Craig Stobo on the show. He's a regular correspondent with us on a weekly basis, and he actually is Chief Executive of New Zealand Wind Farms, which is one of those big wind farm projects just outside Palmerston North. And he has been saying for some time now that when we are trying to transfer to renewable forms of energy in the future, the fact is we simply don't have enough supply in the current circumstances to deal with the demand, and that gas is a critical part of that transition. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I think that the problem that we've got is that if you want to be truly objective about it, is we don't really know. We have a lot of people stating positions, a lot of vested interests, a lot of ideologically bent or inclined interests engaged in the debate. But what we don't have in this country, which is very odd, is an energy strategy that's up to date and actually plots out the way forward. And I think that, MB was working on that. I hope they still are, if they've got, the staff still there to do it, of course. But, we really need an energy strategy that can show us exactly how we're going to make this transition from fossil fuels to renewables.
We do. And you would have thought when the last government in 2018 announced the end of new oil and gas exploration, they might have got a wriggle on, but it's 2024, and that was 6 years ago, Gary.
Yeah, I know, and I don't know why it's taken this long. I know that there was work being done last year. Whether that's paused as a result of budget constraints now or not, I'm not sure. But I do think we need to get on with it. I think that the bottom line, though, probably, and this probably isn't what you want to hear, is that we do need to leave as much oil and gas, or we need to leave all oil in the ground and as much gas in the ground as we can. And that means, facilitating the transition to wind, to geothermal, which can pick up a lot of that peaking demand. We've now got, interestingly enough, and this takes us back, I know, to when we met, we've got Tiwai there, potentially as a kind of a mini Onslow battery for, times when the sun don't shine and the wind don't blow. So, putting all of those ingredients into the pot, looking at the potential for offshore wind off Taranaki, and we've been looking a lot at that. That's got a lot going for it. We really need to have a plan, and we need to have the infrastructure investment tied to that plan so that we can get there.
And the point that Craig Stobo makes, though, Gary, is this. Those are private sector decisions. So companies will make those decisions based upon the profitability or not of those ventures and enterprises. You're not suggesting that government should step in with some sort of public works to meet those gaps that you identify in the market?
No, I'm not. What I'm suggesting is that we need to plan our future, and to go back to your fast track bill. One of the things that would help with the provision of things like wind and solar would be if we could do some strategic spatial planning, some constraints mapping, if you like, to find the areas where those things can go without having adverse environmental effects, and the areas where they shouldn't go. And where they can go, we should have permitted activity status and then let the market rip. Developers like to know with certainty what is permissible in terms of consenting, and I think that would be a good way to go with it. I also think that the government's present proposals around offshore wind, the MB-derived allocation process, which basically is two stages, the first stage being to pick who the preferred bidder is, and the second stage being to assess the environmental conditions. I think it's good that that's still carrying on. So that's a leftover from Labor.
But I guess the problem that I've got, though, is that, and this is the problem that other economic or energy commentators make, is that in the short to medium term, gas is part of the answer. In fact, a critical part of the answer. Do you concede that or not?
Well, yes, of course I do. The question is how much gas and for how long. That's the question. And that's what I don't know the answer to that. I mean, some of your experts might think they know it, but I certainly don't.
They do know, well, what they are saying is that there won't be sufficient gas in the current reserves to be able to meet demand in the future for that transition period, which is why there is a support for Shane Jones's comment yesterday, particularly to do with gas exploration. Listen, I know you're a pragmatist at the end of the day. Would that pragmatically suit you if we didn't have all the solutions to renewable energy, that there would be some transitional reliance upon fossil fuels?
Well, there is transitional reliance on fossil fuels. I mean, we're not going to transition our vehicle fleet to electrics overnight. So, I mean, as I say, the question is, for how long do we need, and what sort of transition do we have? And we've got the Climate Commission giving independent expert advice on that. I mean, I prefer to listen to them than to, gas company people. Wouldn't you?
Listen, I know Rod, and I think he's become a bit of a zealot over the last couple of years, the Climate Change Commission, and I think they've taken a philosophical view. But then they're charged to do so by legislation, aren't they? At the end of the day, they've given a legislative draft to say, this is the direction that you must think, isn't it? How are you going to get there by this time and by this date?
Well, the government's committed to net zero by 2050, and it's got national derived contributions that it has to meet in the intervening period as well. So that's a government commitment. What the Commission does is it prepares budgets, 5-yearly budgets that show how we can transition to in accordance with those goals. And I think that advice that's coming through is very reliable, and I'm sorry to hear you saying that about Rod, because I actually think that he has done an incredibly good job as the Establishment Commissioner. Very challenging, difficult job with lots of moving parts, lots of people pushing and shoving, and I think they've maintained a credible sort of source of independent advice to successive governments.
Okay. Well, we can disagree on that one, though, Gary. But the other thing that I'm interested in from your point of view, though, is the cost of electricity. You see, this winter, the cost of electricity in this country is rising from the sources that we've currently got. One would presume it's not going to come down anytime in the immediate future, and this is causing significant hardship, particularly for those families that are being hit by cost of living increases, which again makes gas and oil, but particularly fossil fuels, more attractive because it's cheaper, particularly around gas, to provide that. And if you take gas and oil out of future energy in this country, we are going to have to find it for renewable energy. And the more renewable energy you build, it's likely that the per capita costs are going to be greater. Do you accept, therefore, that the price of electricity is going to continue its remorseless drive upwards?
Well, I don't know. I'm not an expert on electricity pricing, but I do know that your premise that renewables are more expensive than new fossil fuel sources is highly questionable. I mean, the whole idea that somehow some international investor is going to come in and want to develop a new oil and gas field off the Taranaki coast, given the global context where the world is moving rapidly away from fossil fuels, is fanciful. Nobody
is the world really moving
right
away from
mind is
fossil
gonna
fuels?
put good money into that.